There was a time I didn't even think about standing up. I just did it. My knees bent, straightened, carried me. I didn't second-guess the stairs or hesitate before sitting down. But one day, I noticed the sound first, something small, a faint crack in the right knee. Then I noticed the stillness, how long I stayed on the couch before rising, how stiff my back felt when I reached for a glass. I told myself it was just a bad week, then a bad month, then just getting older. But deep down, I wasn't just worried about pain, I was worried about something much quieter. That I was slowly becoming invisible, not just to others, but to myself. That I was starting to treat my body like a fragile object instead of a living companion. I moved less, not because I was lazy, but because every movement started to carry questions. Will this hurt? Will I lose my balance? What if I fall when no one's home? I stopped going for walks. I started saying no to dinners that involved too many stairs. I sat longer. I stood slower. And the worst part was I started to disappear from my own life. Not all at once, just a little each day. Like one morning, I realized I hadn't stretched in weeks. Hadn't taken a deep breath standing under sunlight. Hadn't felt my own strength, not in my arms, not in my legs, not even in my spine. And that's when I knew. If I didn't move, I would vanish. Not die, not break, but fade from the inside out. So I promised myself not a gym membership, not a big plan, but a small vow: I will move. Gently, softly, but daily, not to be fit. Not to look young, but to stay here, to stay present. To stay in this body I've lived in for over 6 decades. Because if I stopped moving, I wasn't just giving up muscle, I was giving up memory. Of what it feels like to belong to myself. I didn't begin with a routine. I began with a reach. One morning, before even getting out of bed, I stretched my arms slowly toward the ceiling, fingers trembling just slightly, but something in me whispered, "Yes, this is still mine." The next day, I circled my ankles in slow, creaky loops. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and gently rolled my shoulders back, eyes closed, like I was trying to remember what it felt like to move without fear. There was no trainer, no timer, just me and breath, and the quiet decision to not give up on this body. I began brushing my teeth while balancing on one foot, just 10 seconds, then the other foot. I started standing tall for no reason while waiting for the kettle to boil. I reached for high shelves again, not to prove anything, but to tell my joints were still in use. I walked from the kitchen to the living room like someone who had somewhere to be, even if it was just the couch. It wasn't about breaking a sweat. It was about breaking the pattern of stillness. And then I found Tai Chi again. Not the class, not the structure, just the feeling. I remembered the way my neighbor once moved her hands like she was folding air, and I mimicked it in my backyard when no one was watching. I swayed. I breathed deeper. I let my arms rise like water. There was something so steadying about moving slowly on purpose. Not because I was weak, but because I was listening. I started doing gentle stretches at the wall, palms pressing, heels grounded, back lengthening. I sat in a chair and lifted one leg at a time, holding, releasing, noticing how even the smallest effort could call my muscles back to life. And I walked around the garden, then to the gate, then halfway down the block. I didn't count steps. I counted presence. How long could I walk without disappearing into thought? How far could I go while staying right here with myself? These weren't workouts. These were homecomings. Each movement, no matter how small, said, "I'm still in here." This body may creak and resist, but it remembers. It responds. It forgives me. And with each soft repetition, I felt a little less like I was managing decline, and a little more like I was honoring a rhythm I'd neglected. Not a race. A rhythm. Mine. And in that rhythm, I started to feel not young, not strong, but steady. And that, to me, was more than enough. At some point, I realized I had been feeding myself like I was only trying to avoid hunger. Eating to fill, not to nourish. Grabbing what was easy, soft, familiar, toast, instant noodles, white rice, small snacks. Things that didn't ask much from me and didn't give much back either. But when my joints began to ache more often, when I felt my knees wobble a bit after standing too long, I started asking different questions. Not just, what do I feel like eating? But what do I want my body to feel like tomorrow? And the answers led me to slow changes. I began adding sesame seeds to my morning bowl, not for flavor, but for calcium. I learned that a spoon of chia in warm water helped not just my digestion, but my bones. I started cutting back on salt, not because I had to, but because I noticed how much more peaceful my body felt without it. I added soft tofu to soups, sardines to my plate, a little almond butter to my afternoon tea. I stood in front of my fridge and saw not just food, but tools, not obligations, but offerings. I learned to drink water before every meal, to chew slowly, to thank my legs before walking. I sat under the sun, 10 minutes each morning, arms uncovered, not to tan, but to gather vitamin D like prayer. I added more greens to my plate, not always fresh, but always welcome. I made warm dishes with ginger and turmeric, not because it was trendy, but because my grandmother once told me they protected our bones from winter. And I began noticing something. My joints still made noise, but they didn't feel brittle. My energy still ebbed, but it wasn't crashing. My body, even in its age, began to respond, not like it used to, but like it remembered how to be taken care of. And the biggest change wasn't physical, it was emotional. I stopped seeing food as reward or guilt. I started seeing it as communication. A quiet way of saying to myself each day, I want you to stay. I want you to feel strong. You deserve to be fed like someone who matters. And in that, every bowl became a kind of blessing. Every sip of warm broth became a kind of medicine, not to cure, but to care. There was a time I saw movement as something you do to get results, lose weight, fix posture, earn approval. I used to think exercise meant sweat, effort, structure. But somewhere along the way, it became something else entirely. When my body began stiffening, not from lack of strength, but from lack of kindness, I realized I didn't need another workout plan. I needed to reclaim my right to move with dignity. I needed movement that didn't judge me for being slow. I needed gestures that reminded me I still deserved to take up space, not because I was productive, but because I was present. That's when it shifted. Stretching my arms in the morning wasn't just about loosening joints. It became a way of saying, I still begin my day with intention. Sitting tall at the edge of my chair wasn't about posture. It was about reminding myself, I am not collapsing into invisibility. I am still upright, still choosing to rise. Every time I reached for something on a high shelf, I wasn't testing my flexibility. I was asserting my autonomy. Every step I took in the garden wasn't cardio. It was a declaration. I still belong in the world, not just inside walls. Walking became less about pace, more about presence. Tai Chi in the backyard wasn't choreography. It was poetry, my way of speaking to myself through breath and shape. A slow, wordless reminder, you are not fading, you are flowing. I started realizing that movement is not about fixing anything. It's about remembering. Remembering that I am still in this body, that I still have choice, that I can still respond, not just react. I began treating my exercises as rituals, small but sacred. Brushing my hair while standing tall. Washing dishes while shifting weight gently between legs. Lifting one knee while holding the countertop. Rotating my wrists while waiting for the kettle to sing. These were not tasks. They were tiny revolutions. And each time I moved, intentionally, tenderly, I was telling the world, I am still in here. I am still here. Even when no one watches. Even when no one asks. Even when the world forgets to make space for women like me. I make space for myself. With every stretch, every reach, every breath, I no longer move to keep up. I move to stay rooted. To stay loyal to the body that has carried me this far. And that, to me, is self-respect in its truest form, not in how hard I push, but in how gently I refuse to give up on myself. I don't need to move fast. I just need to move. I don't need to impress anyone. I just need to stay present. Some days I walk farther. Some days I stretch less. Some days I do nothing but sit near the window and roll my shoulders in small, slow circles. But what matters is, I don't stop. Not because I'm chasing strength, but because I'm refusing surrender. I've learned that there is power in quiet momentum, in the way the body remembers, even when the mind forgets, in the way my feet still know the path to the garden, in the way my breath deepens when I lift my arms, like wings remembering wind. I don't need a finish line. I just need to keep going, even if my steps are short, even if my knees complain, even if no one notices. Because I notice, I feel it. The steadiness building day after day in the space between effort and grace. The quiet strength of not giving up on myself. Not once, not now, not ever. And I know now, being strong at this age doesn't mean being bold or fast or loud. It means being steady, being soft but rooted, being slow but sure, being gentle with my body but loyal to it. It means waking up and asking, how can I care for you today? And listening for the answer, not with guilt but with tenderness. Because this body may be older, it may move differently, but it is still mine to honor, still mine to move, still mine to carry forward one quiet step at a time. And maybe, just maybe, that is what true strength looks like now. Not speed, not muscle, but the decision to keep going, even slowly, especially slowly. Without apology, without shame, with full presence, and quiet pride. Maybe you're here because your knees have started whispering before your feet hit the floor. Maybe your back takes longer to straighten in the mornings. Maybe you've started sitting a little longer before standing. Maybe you're like me, not broken, not sick, just slower, softer. And maybe that shift scared you a little, not because of the pain, but because of what it meant. That you were becoming someone the world stops waiting for. That your name was being replaced by titles. Mom, Ba, Grandma, letter 1EA5Y. That your body was becoming a chair, not a voice. But what if movement, gentle, quiet, sacred movement, was the way back? Not to who you were, but to who you still are. What if every stretch, every step, every intentional breath was a way of whispering to yourself, I'm still here. I haven't given up on you. What if food wasn't just fuel, but care? What if brushing your hair while standing tall was a form of resilience? What if Tai Chi in the morning sun wasn't about balance, but about dignity? This isn't about becoming young again. It's about becoming present again, becoming rooted again. And maybe, most beautifully, becoming yours again, your breath, your bones, your pace, your rhythm. So no matter how small the step, no matter how slow the stretch, please remember, you don't have to move fast. You just have to keep moving, because you are not disappearing. You are still becoming.